humankind and environment, we mention here about a number of problems. I want to say that Christian churches were at the roots of the ecological awareness. The Holy See and the Orthodox Church and other churches continue to pay attention to the problem of overcoming ecological crisis in the world. The bad situation of ecological situation, the bad state of ecological situation and environmental issues are a very good testimony of the fallen human state. And I will remind you that for the whole human, that all the humankind is always hurt by one single earthquake or by one single flood. It impacts all the world, all the nature. Probably the experience of the saint and the fathers of the church should be an example and a pattern for imitation, so that we could understand that a person who is born in Christ is the beginning of the new creation and the renovation of the world that has been broken by sin. The principle of economy teaches about the unity between the man and the nature. The fauna and the flora and the human world are interconnected. From a Christian point of view, nature is not just a source. It's a mystical presence of God. It's home where the human being is not a master but a servant. It's also a temple where people can serve God. At the background of understanding of nature, there is the concept of anthropocentrism, and this is not biblical. Neglecting the divine call of the man distorts the calling of the man. The ecological problems have anthropological character because they are brought about not by nature but by the human being, and that's why all the roots, all the sources of the ecological problem are to be found in the human heart. The spiritual state of the human being is decisive for improvement of this situation, or on the contrary, of the decay. Anthropology and ecology are united, and this unity we can see very vividly when we are undergoing two crises together, spiritual and ecological. We cannot overcome ecological crisis without overcoming spiritual crisis. It doesn't mean that a church is calling to go down with ecological activities and raising ecological awareness. Not at all. And the church is just emphasizing that the spiritual and the ecological problems are very deeply interwoven. And that's why transformation of nature should start from the transfiguration of human souls. Maxim the Confessor used to say that a human being can turn the earth into paradise when this paradise will be inside of that person. My idea consists in the fact that everything begins within us, within human soul. And not long ago, during the quarantine, during the lockdown, I was walking around in the parks, and I could pay attention how many young people went out not to walk around the parks but to put everything into order. So I realized that everything begins at the bottom of our soul, at the bottom of our heart, and this really caring part of young people came out to clean the area, They realized that during the quarantine, this is the only place where mothers could go with their children to walk. I could not even imagine how many in our Strisky Park. It's quite a good park, but I could never imagine how much garbage was there. And our striving to transform the world is our striving that comes from our soul, from our heart. So we have to remind ourselves and others that we should try to change the world around us. Lviv can be such a platform because Lviv is a much cleaner city in comparison with other cities. I came once to Kiev in winter. No, it was in early spring, and I was really surprised. I could see the pavement in Hreschyatyk, the central Kievan street, as if covered with garbage, like with peas. And when I entered Lviv, I could see that there were no chewing gums on the pavements, no pieces of paper. So people just go to the waste bins and throw the garbage to the waste bins. Why can people be ecologically aware in Lviv and in other cities not? Maybe church should pay more attention to this. Unfortunately, coronavirus has changed our good intentions. I know that Andriy Sadovy, the mayor of Lviv, invited um, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew to visit Lviv so that he could lead the Ecumenical Week in Lviv. Maybe next year we will participate in such forum, in such ecological forum. I am very grateful to the organizers of this forum for raising this issue, because it's a critical issue for Ukraine, for Ukrainian people. Thank you. And Pavlo, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Bishop Filaret, for your word. Thank you for calming us down that apocalypse is not coming yet. I think it's extremely significant for us to hear such words, especially now at the times of COVID. It's crucial to give this encouraging message of hope and peace. So I'm grateful to Bishop Filaret for these nice and warm words, and also for his readiness to receive Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople. When it is difficult to talk about ecclesiology and canon law, in ecology, maybe there is a way, a path for mutual understanding. So thank you very much for your words. Thus, we are moving now to our session. I would like to express one opinion. I would like to refer to a quotation by Bengzong. Shimon Bengzong was a biblical commentator of the 2nd century, and while reading expressions by rabbis published not long ago, everybody knew Father Georgy Kovalenko and Konstantin Sihov and many others know about this. They published a small booklet, and Benzona comments on 4 virtues, which I find very significant for our social ecumenical week and for Ukrainian Christian academic week. He's talking about wisdom. Who is wise? Who is learning from all people? I have been learning from everyone who was teaching me. Who is strong? Strength is the 2nd virtue. The one who can overcome his inclinations. So the one who is stronger than the strong man is the one who can overcome his anger. Who is rich? It's the one who is happy with what he has. If you will eat from what you earn, you will be happy, and you will be and long will be life on this earth. Who is respected? The one who is respected is the one who respects all the creation. Those who disdain me will disdain all the rest. I think this quotation from the with the four mentioned virtues fits perfectly to our topic. So I will start in the opposite direction. Respect. So the one is respected who respects all the creation. So he motivates the respect towards creation by the words of God when he says, I respect those who respect me. So he connects respect for creation with respect to God. Secondly, richness. The one who is happy with what he has is rich. I think it's a good weapon against the logics of consummation, to have more and more and more, which is one of the impetuses of today's crisis. 3, strength. He is strong who can overcome his angry inclinations. And this is a very nice ethos of asceticism that is developed in Orthodox Church. We've been very egoistic with church and with nature and selfish. And the last virtue, wisdom. I've been learning from everyone who has been teaching me. And indeed, we gathered here at the Ecumenical Week theologians, ecologists, eco-businessmen, educators, restaurant managers, 17 different panels scattered in 4 or 5 days. We've been here learning from each other. So scholastics used to say about ecclesia docens and ecclesia dicens, church who is teaching and the church who is learning. And at this ecumenical social week, we see that the church wants to teach and to become a teacher, but it also wants to be a student. It wants to be a disciple and to learn. So the wisdom to learn from everyone who is teaching me. And since wisdom is the last, I have no choice but to ask for a speech. Father Georgy Kovalenko, who is rector of the Open Orthodox University of St. Sophia Wisdom in Kiev. The floor is yours. I've been listening so attentively that I thought, well, my turn is not due yet, but unfortunately I have to begin. So my topic is ecological culture in church and the basics of ecological thinking. So there are 2 topics in my title, and after a brief introduction, I will try to concentrate on both of them. First of all, I would like to start from saying that just the same as Christ is man and God at the same time, in the same way, life in the church consists of spiritual, the act of the Holy Spirit, and material. So it combines matter and spirit. Religion and religious life exists not only in the form of personal internal life, but also in the form of communal community external life. We use objects of nature, of God-made and man-made things. Religious life and religious activity is a God and man process. There is something divine and there is something humane. And it's not only the divine hope that transfigures human reality, but it's also human element in religion. Divine element is not only seen through revelation, but it's also visible in scholarly philosophical views. And here we are approaching the question, what in our religious traditions, rituals, and practices is man-made, that means temporary, imperfect, and sometimes even harmful. And so I will go now to the first part of my topic, of the first topic. The religious cultural awareness is not always ecologically clean, because religion is always floating within culture. But uh, culture encompasses human cultural things. They are not perfect. So partially something that is part of religious culture may be imperfect, as Tertullian used to say. A tradition that does not correspond to gospel is nothing but an old prejudice. Um, I want to make a quotation from this synod, one of the participants of which was John Chryzavkis. He participated yesterday in our session. He is one of the authors of the document from which I want to quote. The document is called For the Life of the World. This document is nearly connected with ecology, and I want to share extracts from this document. I hear echo in my speakers. Is it something you hear as well? Can I go on? Can I continue speaking? Yes, you can go on. So I will hope that you hear. So paragraph 81, probably the first task of the church that is striving to understand the recent developments, and if it wants to ascertain the place of certainty, it has to overcome any visible antagonism between the world of faith and the world of science. So the first task of the church should be to overcome any vivid antagonism between the world of faith and the world of science. And second, it's probably paragraph 85. That's why our ecological crisis should be viewed not just as ethical dilemma, but an ontological and theological problem that requires a radical change in thinking and a new way. Not clear. And this awareness should be followed by our ecological revision of our religious habits and our religious traditions. For a couple of years, we've been hearing the topic of artificial flowers in the cemetery. So in fact, the culture of cemetery. But it's not enough to solve the ecological issues related to the number of quantity and quality of our necropolises, so to say, the cities of the dead. We need a new culture of behavior, and this has to be spoken about, because today cemeteries are forsaken and forgotten by everyone. Concrete like monuments, concrete monuments. What are we hiding? Even sometimes even the church clothing is made of such materials that will never decompose in the soil. It's also the question of funerals procedures and the procedures of remembering the dead. What is connecting us with the dead people? What reminds us of those people? How can we remember them apart from praying and to pray for the salvation? Can it be only the place where the person is buried? Is it only the concrete block that stands on the grave? So we need to revise the culture of funerals should be revisited, because church is the one who has this tradition, who bears this tradition, because usually people would listen to the priest, but not always, of course. Sometimes prejudices are much stronger and they overcome any theological educations, but still I hope that it's overcomable in the long run. Our rituals, our rites, what do we sanctify? Yes, we sanctify water, um, and it's occasion to speak not only about ecology. Let's ask ourselves, what shall we sanctify? Shall sanctification cleanse the water, or shall we sanctify only things that are already cleansed? So before we clean a pond or a lake or a river, so do you submerge Christ into the water that has been already cleansed, or vice versa? We take water from the river. Is it already sanctified by God, or shall we sanctify it and only then it becomes sanctified? Sometimes we cut trees, cut flowers to decorate our temples. So is it good if we cut trees and then not do anything in order to substitute the trees and maybe plant some new trees instead, including in the areas around churches, in the parks? Sometimes we work hard at the computer. We work with our computers and our heads, but not with our hands. And it's also the question of culture, of how to conduct all the rituals, how to celebrate Christian feasts. Why not to dedicate these celebrations at the same time to taking care of our rivers and forests? It's another topic. It's a revision or spreading of this topic in our culture. And the next topic I want to raise is the topic of building and or constructing our temples. Apostle Paul says in Areopag, if I'm not mistaken, he says that God resides not in the man-made temples. And the renovation of or revival of Christianity in Ukraine, it's what is it about? Is it about the number of temples and the size of the temples, or is it the revival of faith in the hearts of people? So the ecology of constructing temples, what technologies are being used, what materials are applied? Is it possible that we will have temples from secondary use, second-hand materials, and it will not be considered something unclean and imperfect? And now I want to switch on to the second part of my title, the religious foundations of ecological thinking. So in order to consider a temple made of second-hand materials a holy place, we should have a different attitude to what we call garbage or recycling. Maybe we need this blessed recycling, because they say, please don't throw away the plastic bottle because there was sanctified water in it. Better you should burn it. But burning plastic bottle, does it do any good to the environment? So don't throw out to garbage books that have some sacred meaning. It's better to burn them. But does it do any good to environment? Again, maybe new books can be made of the old books. I have my favorite example. I often tell about this example. It's one of the first verses in Holy Scriptures. We cite it when we speak on ecology. What do we read in the Bible? I had an experience of Bible stories for children, and Sabadan, it seemed to me for a moment that I invented a word, but then I found out that a couple of previous generations already used this word. We simply forgot about it. The expression that be master over the earth. In different translations, there are different ways to translate this. Be master, take ownership, rule, be a king of. And there is the synodal variant in Church Slavonic, Vladычествуйте, like be a master, or be and be a host. When you don't own something, when you don't suppress the earth, but rather a real host, a real farmer. It's Christ and ecological thinking. Christ himself used ecological image of hyena. So in our case, this hyena that is burning can be like a dump site, like a contemporary dump site that is burning. If we say that the kingdom of God is amongst us and inside us, it's not just a figure of speech, but the reality of divine presence. And dump site is not just a wonderful image to explain what hell is all about, but it's the reality of this hell in our world. And another topic, it's a bloodless sacrifice instead of killing animals. Not only we Christians should have a close look at our traditions, but in the context of this discussion pertaining to the state celebration, I would like to hear theologians representing Islam, Judaism, how they think ecologically. I know that at the celebration of Qurban Bayram, Muslims separate stuff into parts, and one part of this they give to the poor. So which way should these animals be killed? A Christian may be a vegetarian, but on the other hand, we also have to understand that not everything is so bad with religion. Some things have to be recognized. With some things we have to come to terms with. There are certain things that are of human origin, and they have to be corrected with time. Just a couple of days ago, one of my daughters tells me, look, the production of meat does biggest detriment to ecology. And what about our religious cultures? What about Lenting, fasting? The Lent, together with all the fastings, take more than half of the year. And this is what many people offer as a step-by-step roadmap for the whole society, either gradual or temporary limitation in food. So Lent may be one of the technologies, or in general fasting. We can search for answers in already existing theological text. We should not invent a new system, because all this is already known. We all live in one planet under one sun. It doesn't have to be a system of prohibitions, but the system of questions and answers uh, from the point of view of Christian, Muslim and Jewish traditions. I think in this sense we are doomed to a dialogue, not only interconfessional, but also a dialogue between the church and philosophers, society, uh, theoretical scientists, practitioners, discussing all together this ecological crisis uh, without accusing each other of godless deeds. As Bishop Philaret mentioned, we should start from ourselves. We should start from myself as a particular person and from ourselves as a community, which church is. Thank you. Thank you very much, Father Georgi, for your words. Father Georgi has announced to us that his speech is going to be a heretic one, and now I remember the words by Metropolitan Zizoulas, who said, "Be it not for heresy, the dogmatic development wouldn't have been impossible." So heresy is always a stimulus, an impetus for the development of dogmatic teaching, because Father Georgi have demonstrated to us that ecology is a stimulus for the development of theological thinking. Ecology makes us think and revise theology, reassess theology. What for does the church exist? What for does the temple exist? For whom does it exist? Why do we fast? What's the sense in an ascesis? Ecology makes us think over our Christianity, and I'm grateful to Father Georgi for his inspired contribution. Now I want to pass the floor to our next speaker, Maria Serretti, who is a doctorate degree student at the Department of Theology at Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. She's an icon of our ecumenical week. We want to offer ecological topic for ecumenical dialogue, and we decided that this topic is very good for the seminar of the Ukrainian Christian academic community that used to deal in the past with questions of ecclesiology, and today we are looking at how ecology becomes the basis for dialogue between Christians, ecumenical dialogue. And Maria Serretti conducts research, and this research pertains to the way how Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew cooperate for the sake of ecological topic, and how they made ecology #1 topic in ecumenical theological dialogue. That's why I'm honored to invite Maria, this voice of Greece among us. You're welcome.
My topic is Integral Ecology, the common message of the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew and Pope Rome Francis. One of the main subjects of modern reflection is the protection of the environment, the ruthless and methodic man-made vandalism of nature-led nature, as well as the entire inhabited world to disaster. Recent incidents worldwide demonstrate men's thoughtfulness towards nature. For example, the huge oil slick in Siberia, the fires in Australia, the explosion in Beirut, Lebanon, etc. Man is firmly convicted that sun will always rise the next morning. But when will he take into serious account that things are getting dangerous? Conscientious people and organizations struggle to transmit a message of responsibility and conscience to the world. Nevertheless, the effort and the joint agreement of the two ecclesiastical fathers, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew and Pope Rome Francis, are remarkable. The Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, embracing the effort made by the ecumenical movement and the World Council of Churches to address contemporary concerns and pursue a more dynamic course in space and time, expresses his constant care for nature and his dynamic work for ecology, which includes everything, namely what we call integral. In his study named Encountering the Mystery, Bartholomew endorses environmental justice and he highlights that our concern for the creation should be linked to our concern for social issues such as poverty, war, injustice, inequality, hunger. Caring for the environment is not only a political or technological matter, it is also a religious and spiritual matter, as he himself stresses. At this point, he talks about the connection between the concepts of ecology economy. He clarifies that ecology economy share a common reference point, which is the word eco. It stems from the Greek word ekos, household. Ecology has a broader sense. It includes everything. In other words, it is the place we all reside in, while economy is the law, the management of the world as a place of residence. We are the ones to decide how we'll treat the world and whether we will respect it or exploit it. Economics and ecology are directly related to the concern of Patriarch Bartholomew, a concept and vision that found its way into programs in the ecumenical movement and especially in the Decade for the Overcoming of Violence, DAV, and the Alternative Globalization Addressing People and Earth, AGAPE process, and its follow-up program, Poverty, Wealth and Ecology, the consequences of ecumenical globalization. The Holy and the Great Council of the Orthodox Church, which was convened in Crete, led by the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew in 2016, focused on the social dimensions and the tragic consequences caused by destruction of the environment. And it also expressed the view that in order to address the ecological issue, a radical change in our lifestyle is needed. It is encouraging to note that nowadays, for the first time, there is a global agreement on the way social and ecological crises are examined, since there is awakening of our responsibility towards protecting our household. Pope Francis of Rome also supported the effort made by the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, aiming at the protection of the creation. In his study Laudato Si, Pope Francis highlights how much has Patriarch Bartholomew contributed to environmental issues and emphasizes that they mutually hope for a complete ecclesiastic community. He invokes Bartholomew's messages referring to lifestyle changes in order for us to move from greediness to generosity, meaning to learn how to give and not simply renounce. He talks about the integral concept of ecology, in which modern Annunciation is reconnected with prayers and mysteries, with the struggle for justice and environmental concern. Everything is connected. That is why environmental care is needed. At the same time, with sincere love for people and a firm commitment to solving society's problems, the Argentine pontiff said. The Pope, who is particularly sensitive with poor people, brings Saint Francis of Assisi as an example, a saint who, despite being simple, did not forget to convey the message of justice towards the poor ones, as well as engagement within society and internal peace. He turned against development without justice and against competitiveness that destroys job market and generates employment, poverty and exclusion. As the Pope says, in order to care for poor people, it is imperative that we stop thinking about ourselves and draw our attention to others. What he means is that surpassing ourselves is the key in order to cater for others as well as for the natural environment. The Pope is fighting for a future based on unity and notes that united we shall march despite our differences. This is the path of Jesus. Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew united, shared their common concern, and disseminated a hope of a full-fledged ecclesiastical society. As the Pope characteristically says in his circular, Patriarch Bartholomew explains that a crime in nature is a crime against ourselves and a sin against God. Through their common message, Bartholomew and Francis revitalize Christian teaching about the environmental issue, thus allowing not only theological but also social concern to be generated. The environment, just like human rights, global justice, equality, and peace, are all seen as dialogue priorities among religions. The joint declaration of Bartholomew and Francis mentioned above includes not only ecological issues, refugees, etc. Today, they are united again in the face of the painful situation facing humanity, the so-called COVID-19 pandemic. The Patriarch Bartholomew encourages Christians that this is a test that will pass, and the test is an opportunity to change for the better in the direction of consolidating love and solidarity. And Pope Francis remarks that it is time to reach out to those who are suffering and most in need, because life is measured by love. Thank you so for your much for your attention.
I'm grateful to Maria for her brilliant uh, contribution. She reminded to us that ecology has to be integral, that is, to integrate and interconnect different spheres of human life, in particular religion and economics. And indeed, if our churches fail to translate their message into the language of economics, into the language of politics and urban studies, then our task will be a failure. I'm also grateful to Maria for the lesson of Greece. Indeed, we needed to hear the voice of Greece to remind us of the fact that economics, economy, ecology, and I will only add one more, ecumenism, have all one and the same stem, one and the same root, eco. I have to recognize that 70% of people, when they speak about the Institute of Ecumenic Studies or about Ecumenic Social Week, they usually say, this is the Institute of Economic Studies. I'm always irritated by this, but I think that in this context, Felix culpa, in this mistake, great theological meaning is hidden indeed. We have to make our best to make sure that the language of ecology, the language of economy, and the language of inter-Christian relations could become something that unites us and serves the salvation of the world. As the recent Orthodox Church document teaches us. The document on which Father John Chryzavhis worked on, and also Father Georgi Kovalenko was part of the working group. You've heard the bells. This is probably a sign from heaven here that we should take a short break. How long? 5 minutes? Okay, 5-minute break. Please don't log off, don't disconnect. You can continue watching video, you can have a coffee or just relax, walk around. In 5 minutes, please come back, and we will have two next contributions from Father Oleg Kindi and Dr. Fabienne Revol. So I'm inviting you, please come back in 5 minutes to listen to the speeches and a follow-up discussion. So do not disappear. Thank you for your attention.
Якщо тобі не байдужа доля планети, країни, твого міста, ти прагнеш дізнатися про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля, долучитися до творення.
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Долучайся до обговорення кращих екологічних практик, громадських ініціатив. Дізнайся про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля. Серед учасників форуму громадська ініціатива «Чисте місто», міжнародна благодійна організація «Екологія. Право. Людина», міжнародна кліматична організація 350.org та інші.
Об'єднаємося разом, щоб знайти рішення. Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Сформувати нову екологічну свідомість. Як плекати екологічні знання та навики? Яка роль освіти? Запрошуємо освітян приєднатися до учасників Всеукраїнського суспільного форуму.
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Науковці вітчизняних та зарубіжних університетів, експерти з екобогослов'я та сталого розвитку, наукові здобутки та навчальні практики. Дізнайтеся, як наука та освіта відповідають на екологічні виклики сьогодення.
Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Вагомість екологічної кризи вимагає, аби всі працювали для спільного добра і поступу, зазначив Папа Франциск в енцикліці «Лаудато Сі».
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Провідні богослови, кардинал Пітер Турксон, префект дискатерії служіння цілісному людському розвиткові, отець доктор Джон Хріссавгіс, радник Вселенського патріарха з екологічних питань, доктор Юрген Мольтман, протестантський богослов, дискутуватимуть про роль церков у вирішенні екологічних питань.
Долучайся до обговорення. Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Якщо тобі не байдужа доля планети, країни, твого міста, ти прагнеш дізнатися про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля, долучитися до творення.
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Долучайся до обговорення кращих екологічних практик, громадських ініціатив. Дізнайся про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля. Серед учасників форуму громадська ініціатива «Чисте місто», міжнародна благодійна організація «Екологія. Право. Людина», міжнародна кліматична організація 350.org та інші.
Об'єднаємося разом, щоб знайти рішення. Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізується реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Як сформувати нову екологічну свідомість? Як плекати екологічні знання та навики? Яка роль освіти? Запрошуємо освітян приєднатися до учасників Всеукраїнського суспільного форуму.
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Науковці вітчизняних та зарубіжних університетів, експерти з екобогослов'я та сталого розвитку, наукові здобутки та навчальні практики. Дізнайтеся, як наука та освіта відповідають на екологічні виклики сьогодення.
Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Вагомість екологічної кризи вимагає, аби всі працювали для спільного добра і поступу, зазначив Папа Франциск в енцикліці «Лаудато Сі».
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Провідні богослови, кардинал Пітер Турксон, префект дискатерії служіння цілісному людському розвиткові, отець доктор Джон Хріссавгіс, радник Вселенського патріарха з екологічних питань, доктор Юрген Мольтман, протестантський богослов, дискутуватимуть про роль церков у вирішенні екологічних питань.
Долучайся до обговорення. Програма форуму на сайті esweek.org.ua.
Проект реалізовується у партнерстві із фондом Конрада Аденауера в Україні. Якщо тобі не байдужа доля планети, країни, твого міста, ти прагнеш дізнатися про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля, долучитися до творення.
З 7 по 10 жовтня відбудеться 13-й екуменічний соціальний тиждень «Почути крик землі. Інтегральна екологія в дії».
Долучайся до обговорення кращих екологічних практик, громадських ініціатив. Дізнайся про нові підходи у вирішенні проблем довкілля. Серед учасників форуму громадська ініціатива «Чисте місто», міжнародна
Can you hear me? I am now inviting everyone to come back. Can you hear me? I'm addressing the technical service. I'm asking for the technical service to give me a sign if I can start speaking. So everybody can hear me? Okay, that's fine. We can start. I'm grateful to everyone who came back after this break. I hope your internal ecology has been improved over these 5 minutes. And now I want to invite to speak our father, Dr. Oleg Kindi. He is teacher and professor at the Ukrainian Catholic University and also doctor of NGO Center for Eco-Theology and Sustainable Development based in our university. Here he is one of the promoters of ecological awareness. This is not a compliment, but I can fully affligedly state this. Without Father Oleg, our ecumenical social week will not be the way it is. He is one of the stems. He is the soul of our event, of our forum. He is a moderator and speaker in many events, in many panels. So he's been really working hard to make his contribution to this event. He also spoke at a number of panels, and this will be probably his last speech, right? Am I right? So this is a kind of swan song in this ecumenical week. So we are looking forward to your stimulating, genius ideas. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much for such warm and inspiring words. I doubt if I will never reach such heavenly such heavenly level that you have described. I am happy that I can participate in this Ukrainian Christian academic community. I know that it has beautiful history behind, wonderful and excellent speakers, and so I am honored to join this community. The topic I want to present sounds inter maximum and minimum, the principles of social teaching of Catholic Church in the context of ecological crisis and globalization. This topic, this contribution is the result of my recent years of search. And I would probably like to start from a little bit of personal story. My personal interest in the question of preservation of nature, ecology, ecotheology, was fostered by the participation in the international conference Landscape Architecture in the Context of Sustainable Development that was organized by National Forestry University as far back as 2008, when I was just beginning to work at the Department of Theology. Many questions that were articulated then were really bore a lot of questions in me. Quite often, economists have their decision of ecological problems, ecologists have their decision, and the spiritual sphere and the educational spheres stay in their circle of interest. And that conference that took place more than 10 years ago was a beginning of a significant discussion about sustainable development, and it was organized as an interdisciplinary conference where different specialists were present from different spheres. And this is the approach that Pope Francis emphasizes when he gives us certain prompts how to get out of the current crisis. And the second cause of my interest in the social dimension was the result of my meeting with the former director of the Institute of Religion and Society, Mr. Miroslav Marinovich. Once he came to the Department of Theology, and we were young and sure of ourselves, and he told us, look, you are young teachers of theology. You know a lot about God, the Trinity, the incarnation of Christ. And what does church teach about the poor man, about the social inequity, how to behave at war, what's to be done when the world is going down into ecological apocalypse? And then I realized that our religious experiences and our searches have to be tested in practice. Our faith in the loving God has to be expressed in the form of struggle for the social justice and for the freedom of consciousness. When John in his gospel said, when somebody says, I love God, but I hate my brother, then he's not saying true, because the one who does not love his brother, whom he sees, cannot love God, whom he doesn't see. And now, a little bit about the title of my presentation. What is it, maximum and minimum? These are the extremal points of the existence. They were first mentioned like this, in this meaning, by the medieval philosopher Mykola Kozansky. He talks about the connection between what Greeks called macrocosmos and microcosmos, that they are intensely interrelated. If something happens on the level of macrocosmos, then it inevitably impacts the microcosmos. And now, in the context of ecological crisis, we can see also the reverse. The microcosm, the human being with its appetites, with his or her appetites and the lifestyle, impacts the macrocosmos, the global heating and the global ecological crisis. The church has been thinking of the role of people, economics, politics, state throughout the 2,000 years already. But starting from the end of the 19th century, and here we have to mention Pope Leo XIII, the church started, so to say, a separate chapter in its speculations, in its reflections regarding the social questions. The first social encyclic, Rerum Novarum, speaks about the situation of the working class. It raises the issue, what is the dignity of the human being? What is the dignity of the human work? At those times, there was no such a notion as the minimum salary, but the church was already suggesting at that time to think how to provide for the poorest person so that he or she could continue living on this world. Pope Pius XI issued his encyclic Rerum in the 14th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, published his own encyclica Quadragesimo Anno about the renovation of the social order. 20th century is the century of robust changes. Pope John the 23rd published in 1963 Pacem in Terris, where he speaks about the peace among people, peace that has to be based on truth, justice, love, and freedom. He speaks about peace. He talks about economical and interstate relations. A very significant turning point in the 20th century was the perception of church, its view on human being and in the society. In the perception of human being and in the society is such event as the Second Vatican Council, of which everybody knows. One of the key documents of the Second Vatican Council was and is Gaudium et Spes. In this document, Catholic Church emphasizes that the Church is not just bishops, priests, monks, and some structures, but in fact, Church is all those who have faith in Christ. And first of all, the lay people. The lay people decide how to form Church, how it should build its relations with the earth on which we live, which political position should we take in this society. And in my favorite paragraph 39, it is said that in the human progress we can see some elements of the kingdom of God, but these things are not the same. Sometimes from philosophical and worldview positions we think that we can achieve the kingdom of God on earth. Different utopias and economical models have been developing just in order to satisfy this human request. Church, on the one hand, believes that people want to create as good society as possible. On the other hand, Church understands that our opportunities, our possibilities are miserable, and that we will not construct ideal life here, and we should be more humile, looking at we should look at our efforts and our desires with more humility. Sometimes there are also some more social encyclics which are worth mentioning in order to understand better the views of current Pope Francis on society and the question of preservation of nature. The significant encyclic is the encyclic by John Paul II, Centesimus Annus. This encyclic was written in the 100th anniversary from the first publication of the social encyclic Rerum Novarum. St. John Paul II was very close to us, Pope. On the one hand, he knew very well what communism and socialism are with their political and economical visions. On the other hand, the second half of his life he lived in the Western society, and he could understand very well what capitalism is, what free laissez-faire market is, and what are the weak and strong points of this or another political system. And in this encyclic he was giving moral analysis of these two economical systems, and he gave us to understand that both of them have weak points, and they both are sick with fundamental mistakes. Before that, I was talking about Catholic Church, but we should understand that it's also important to understand other churches, Protestant Orthodox churches, since they also made their big contribution into the development of ecological awareness in different countries of the world. We call Patriarch Bartholomew a green patriarch. At certain time, Pope Benedict XVI was also called Green Pope. For instance, his encyclic Caritas in Veritate provides very concrete examples which changes in economical and political life should come to be sure that the world in which we live becomes more justful. But Pope Benedict XVI was also doing some was not only delivering encyclicas, but was also doing some deeds. For instance, he changed all the roofs in Vatican into roofs that perceive sunlight, and that's why this way they provide electricity for Vatican, and even what remains they sell to the city of Rome. So Vatican is the first state which as of today functions according to the principles which we call zero waste, and they do not produce any waste. Since we understand if we want to change the future to preserve the planet for our children, we have to revise economical, social models, and these two are interconnected, and they both have spiritual beginning. The main category that the Church uses is the construction of just society. Justice is not possible without mercy. And mercy is mercy when it is justful. These great topics that social teaching of the Catholic Church develops, these are two more big topics. These are globalization and ecology. About ecology, Pope Francis spoke in his encyclic Laudato Si. But so far there is no encyclica where he would touch the question of globalization. But maybe Pope Francis and maybe his followers will give a separate answer to the question what globalization is, what are its strong and weak points. The four main principles of the social doctrine of the Catholic Church. We can trace the most important ideas about ecology and globalization in Encyclica Laudato Si, and in general in the social doctrine of the Catholic Church. I'm offering here a couple of thoughts expressed by Pope Francis in his encyclica pertaining to the questions, what can Church offer to people today? First, shared welfare is our shared home. We've had already today our lesson of Greek language, and we know what is echo. We are all interconnected, and we have to do our best to construct a society where everybody feels comfortable. We cannot construct society where some elected people enjoy all the welfares of the planet, and the majority, unfortunately, including Ukraine, are on the level of survival. The second principle is subsidiarity. The principle of subsidiarity provides the biggest attention to pays the biggest attention to the people on site, the local communities. If the local community is not coping with sorting out local issues, then it appeals to some higher level of power, of authority. So some decisions that we can find here may be useful for Latin America, for example, or may not be useful, or what specialists of economics find in the United States may work good for them, but for us maybe not. So we have to prioritize local level over the global level, and the move should be from down up and not vice versa. The next principle, number 3, is solidarity. Pope Francis is calling for solidarity, and John Paul II was calling to it when he was Pope. It doesn't. He means that we should not sit at our local networks, but we should stretch our hands to reach out to others. John Paul II liked to use the message, the epistle of St. Paul to Galatians. He says, carry the burdens of each other. It's chapter 6, verse 2. The problem of the poor is also my problem. We have to help each other to construct a society of solidarity. And the last principle is the principle of attention to the most unprotected. It's called in English the option for the poor. It's the newest principle that has been developing since the 1960s. It's the principle that Pope Francis is using, attention to the most unprotected. If we are constructing society and forget about the most poor, the orphans, the widowers, and we count only on constructing some comfortable society for the well-off people, then we are already constructing the society of injustice, and the voices, the cries of the poor will destroy it sooner or later. So our calculations should be always with thinking about the poor. Now we can see that nature is also undergoing this crisis. The nature is becoming that poor, that most unprotected element in our house. And the key points, and I'm finishing. The spiritual perspective now is an inalienable element of the discussion about the preservation of nature. It's not only about economists and physics and biologists and chemists, also called natural sciences. We understand that their voice and their expertise is not enough. We have to hear also a psychologist, a spiritual leader, and a representative of humanitarian sphere. We have to sit down together and look for solutions together. Or in the countries that we call the countries of the third world. There is such a saying in English, less is more. We have to reassess and revise how we consume products, how we consume food. This pertains to production, to technologies of production. There is also the question and issue of clean technologies, renewable technologies. If we do not achieve the parameters of sustainability, we'll be facing problems and serious problems. The church puts the question of preservation of nature at the center of its care, because for a long time, ecology was at the outskirts for the church concern. It seemed like ecology was something that was on the last place, although this is not true. We are prioritizing ecology together with human being, and we are not marginalizing ecological topics. We have a big heritage. We have spiritual legacy, everything that different churches and their theologians have developed during the last half of the century. Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, all those who write about or scream about ecological conversion. We are all interconnected. Economics is replying to our requests. But what are our requests? Are our requests consistent with our internal spiritual needs? Or maybe our spiritual appetites are constantly being compensated by materialized surrogates, which make us as if happy, but in fact, the more we consume them, the more we are willing to consume them more and yet stay hungry and thirsty. The global dialogue and solidarity are extremely necessary. They are crucial. We have to cooperate. We have to go out, to reach out. The conversion of heart is the change of heart. If we do not change, then our external changes will make no sense. We need to experience internal conversion to recognize that there is a creator above us, that the world that we see is the created world and we are part of it, and we are co-responsible for this world, and we are also responsible before the future generations. This is where I will stop. Thank you very much for this occasion to speak to you, and I'm looking forward to further presentations and the follow-up discussion. I'm grateful to Father Oleg for his excellent presentation. Yes, he emphasized how the theological ideas float from one tradition to another. I think this is also our task at the Ukrainian Christian academic community, to see how to experience how different representatives of different churches share their ideas and their experiences. I'm not talking here about syncretism, but I'm talking about the act of Holy Spirit that is acting in another tradition. Maybe for Catholics, the voice of ecology in the Orthodox Church could be the voice, the pioneer voice that has been impacting other confessions since 90s, and it's beautiful. I don't know what would Catholic Church be like if, let's say, Protestants would not have helped them to open, to rediscover the significance of Holy Scriptures and reading Bible every day. Our next speaker is Dr. Fabien Revol. He is director of Interdisciplinary Center for Ethics and co-director of the Research Laboratory in Integral Development, Ecology and Ethics in Catholic University in Lyon. Professor Revol studied in Toronto in Canada, and I'm happy that now among our listeners is Professor Abraham Han from Toronto School of Theology. I don't know if you know Professor Revol. It's significant for us to hear the voice of France, the country that played such a significant role in the international ecumenical dialogue. And now I know that the Ukrainian eparchy in France, in Paris, is preparing the translation of the book by Father Couturier about prayer. Lyon is a very ecumenical city. Irenaeus from Lyon is an example of it's a father of church from Syria that was teaching and preaching in Gallia. It's a live example of this exchange of gifts. So, Professor Revol, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. I feel very privileged of being here among this impressive panel and this impressive program for this ecumenical social week. To prepare this paper, I've been inspired by the very title of this international forum, Hear the Cry of the Earth. The topic of the cry of the earth is very interesting from a theological point of view. It is a means to help Christians to be aware of the ecological crisis crossed by the planet in order to make them feel more responsible for their vocation to the care for creation. Attention is thus given to creation as a being and even a subject being concerned insofar as it is a subject by ecological crisis, and not only because it concerns the jeopardy of the well-being and welfare of humanity. This discovery is plainly a part of a chapter of what Pope Francis calls the good news of creation, or the gospel of creation in Laudato Si. The role of this chapter of Laudato Si is the shedding of the light of Christian revelation on our ecological behaviors, and more widely on our very sense of inhabitation of our common home. This light is most important to see because it is the basis for a conversion to integral ecology. So I propose to study the topic of the cry of the earth from this angle. First, seeing how it is connected to scripture, and mostly to Romans chapter 8, verse 20 to 22. Then, what are the two human means of hearing such a cry? Ecological science and poetry, for ending with Franciscan theological inputs on this crying sister and mother. Pope Francis is not the first pope to refer to Romans chapter 8, verse 20 to 22, speaking of the ecological crisis from a theological point of view. As soon as 1982, Saint John Paul II did it for the anniversary of Saint Francis of Assisi. I quote, "The example of Francis in this area again demonstrates this forcefully. Creatures and the elements will only be protected from any unjust and harmful violation to the extent that, in the light of the biblical teaching on creation and redemption, we will consider them as beings towards whom man is bound by duties and on whom he has not allowed him to act as he pleases, as creatures who, with him, await and desire their liberation from slavery of corruption to share in the glorious freedom of the children of God." End of quote. John Paul II saw very early that the relationship with nature as a resource had harmful consequences on the environment. This conception of nature is out of order with respect to the initial creative project in which God wants to associate the human being. In his 1990 message for peace, John Paul II wrote, I quote, "When man turns his back on the Creator's plan, he provokes a disorder which has inevitable repercussions on the rest of the created order." According to the author, this appropriately comments on Hosea chapter 4, verse 3, where the prophet Hosea announces the outcome of a state of conflict between the people and God. I quote Hosea. "Because of this, the land dries up, and all who live in it waste away. The beasts of the field, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea are swept away." There is a strong connection in the Bible between respect for the order of creation and its negative reaction in the form of an ecological crisis. John Paul II adds in Centesimus Annus that when he behaves in this way, I quote, "instead of carrying out his role as a co-creator with God in the work of creation, man sets himself up in place of God and thus ends up provoking a rebellion on the part of nature, which is more tyrannized than governed by him." Then, Pope Francis's proposal is situated in the same stream of interpretation of Romans 8, analyzing the current and past relationship of humanity with its common home. He refers to this text to draw our attention to the fact that Earth is a sister, a suffering sister crying out of her pain. I quote the verses of the Epistle of Romans to Romans. For the creation awaits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. The problem is, it is human action that is causing this suffering. However, the ecological crisis makes people realize that the earth belongs to the category of the poor, like Pope Francis does in Laudato Si paragraph 2. I quote, "This is why the earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. She groans in travail." The earth, through its moans, produces a clamor, which cries in our ears its thirst for liberation. But the earth is also us, humans. The cry of the earth and the cry of humans is ultimately the one and the same. Is God attentive to this clamor? It seems so, insofar as creation has been entrusted to the human creature for its care and flourishing according to Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And there is a clear lack of care from our part. In this sense, the clamor or cry of the earth is by contrast the affirmation of this vocation of the human being by creation to be good warden of the common home, which is part of the gospel of creation. God is aware of the cry of the earth. But what about us humans? How can we be aware of it? For Pope Francis, there is a means to hear and listen to the voice of the earth quite extensively in the context of the ecological crisis. It is to be aware of and integrate the scientific discourse used by ecologists to describe the manifestation, causes, and evolutions of that same ecological crisis. The voice of the earth is quite an anthropomorphism. St. Paul refers to creation as to a person being able to voice its suffering and its eager longing for salvation. But there is no actual human-like voice to be heard. Therefore, the suffering and clamor must be translated into words and discourse that human reason and heart can receive and interpret as cries. The climate change, the decrease of biodiversity, and the extinction of species, the suffering of animals, the desertification due to recurring droughts, the recurring floods and typhoons devastating human conditions of inhabitation on coastlands, the pollution due to the diverse sources of wastes. There is a theological point to mention here. Pope Francis thus declares his deep trust in the capacity of modern science to describe reality. It goes even further. Science is also brought into discussion for the elaboration of the paradigm of integral ecology, especially with the concept of connectedness. Everything is connected, repeats Pope Francis in Laudato Si. There is an ontological principle that comes from the reception of the very scientific definition of ecology. It is the science that studies the relationships between the beings themselves and their place of inhabitation. For Pope Francis, that too belongs to the gospel of creation, because this interconnectedness belongs to the state of creature. Created beings are done so being connected to one another. This is even the signal and signature of the author of creation, a Trinitarian God, a Trinitarian creator God. The claimer of people is then intimately connected to that of the earth. This unity of claimer can be deciphered thanks to another field of human culture, which is poetry. This aspect of Francis's thinking hardly appears in Laudato Si and is embedded in the larger theme of the importance of traditional cultures. It is truly in the post-synodal apostolic exhortation Querida Amazonia, published in 2020, that this theme unfolds in a manifest, explicit and effective way in this beautiful text. For the Holy Father, I quote, "Poetry helps to express a painful feeling that many today share," in paragraph 47. The key to understand is this. Poetry is a product of culture, yet culture develops in a civilization which is constituted in close relationship with its natural environment. Pope Francis is keen to show the strength of this reality with regard to the Amazonian territory. Let's take a closer look at the text in Querida Amazonia, number 31. Each of the peoples that has survived in the Amazon region possesses its own cultural identity and unique richness in our multicultural universe. Thanks to the close relationship established by the inhabitants with their surroundings in a non-deterministic symbiosis, which is hard to conceive using mental categories imported from without. Then he quotes a poem. Once there was a countryside with its river, its animals, its clouds, and its trees. But sometimes, when the countryside with its river and trees was nowhere to be seen, those things had to spring up in the mind of a child. End of quote. So, in the poetry of the Amazonian area, the Amazon is expressed through the experience of those who inhabit it and what they do with it. So, when this area is threatened by the predation of an economy that is disrespectful of people and their environment, poetry can also be the voice of the suffering of populations, but also of the mistreatment of the territory itself. See, for example, Querida Amazonia number 36, I quote, "The ethnic groups that, in interaction with nature, developed a cultural treasure marked by a strong sense of community, readily notice our darker aspects, which we do not recognize in the midst of our alleged progress." And more precisely, the Pope insists on the fact, in number 40, if the ancestral culture of the original peoples arose and developed in intimate contact with the natural environment, then it will be hard for them to remain unaffected once that environment is damaged. Nature and culture are intrinsically linked, which goes against the modern perception of this relationship, in which culture is built by emancipation from the state of nature. Francis was already making mention of his main idea present in Laudato Si by affirming an analogy between the disappearance of species, the erosion of biodiversity, and the disappearance of traditional cultures. In Querida Amazonia, this idea is applied in a concrete way when regard to the Amazonian forest ecosystems. It's in paragraph 28. Just as there are potentialities in nature that can be lost forever, the same can happen with cultures that bear a message not yet heard, cultures more threatened than ever today. Here again, there is a theological point to be made. There is an expression, this is an expression of the theology of people born in Argentina in the late 1970s. The principle is rooted on the very old Christian conviction that the wisdom of the native people has been created by the same divine word of God. It is thus important, through hearing the clamor of the people, to be attentive to that same word expressed in the culture of a people or in its clamor when it is oppressed. This takes a further depth when we realize that this wisdom is connected to ecological life. The needs of the people and the needs of the earth are one and the same because of the unity of the expression of the divine creator word. In a sense, this clamor of the poor and of the earth belongs to the gospel of creation. Saint Francis of Assisi, who is given by Pope Francis as a model for integral ecology, considers the earth as a mother and a sister. So begins the encyclical Laudato Si. Laudato Si, mi Signore, praise be to you, my Lord. In the words of this beautiful canticle, St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. Praise to you, praise be to you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us and who produces various fruits and colored flowers and herbs. The first paragraph invites us to consider the earth as a mother and sister. At first glance, one might be surprised that a pope insists so much on a theme that seems to belong to paganism. Mother Earth is a figure that appears in the so-called primordial wisdom traditions, or first or native peoples, such as American Indians. The Argentinian origin of our pope tends to tip the scales for the South American culture, in which the earth is presented as a being personified in the guise of the Pachamama, the mother and nourishing earth on which we all depend, to which we all belong, and which cannot belong to anyone. Likewise, we can also be surprised to see the use of this theme, which was picked up by the New Age stream, in which we find the idea that the planet behaves like a larger organism of which all parts are interdependent. The author of this theory, James Lovelock, along with Lynn Margulis, named that superorganism Gaia, the goddess of the earth for ancient Greece. Would the Holy Father contribute to the new paganism of radical ecology streams? It is not the first time he has been talking about it. The first evocation of this idea in a speech is given in 2014, I quote, "All peoples of the earth, all men and women of goodwill, all of us must raise our voices in defense of these two precious gifts, peace and nature, or Sister Mother Earth, as St. Francis of Assisi called her." Likewise, this theme was already germinating in Evangelii Gaudium number 183. The earth is our common home, and all of us are brothers and sisters. Here, the seemingly theological trick of Pope Francis is not unrelated to the greater Christian tradition. He thus practices a form of inculturation of revelation by showing how certain human aspirations are found fulfilled in our faith in Christ, and above all, with the Synod on the bishops of Amazonia. How the wisdoms of the people are preparation for the rooting of Christian revelation. It can be compared to what early Christians did with Greek philosophy, looking for the semine verbi, the seeds of the divine word. In this case, here, this image of our Mother Earth is always associated with that of common home. The root of the word ecology is the word oikos, which means house. Ecology is indeed the science of habitat. In Greek, common house is said oikumene. So ecumenism is also the concern for the common home. How can this link between the land and the image of the common home be established theologically? The prophet Isaiah gives us the answer. For this is what the Lord says. He who created the heavens, he is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, he founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. That creation is our common home follows directly from the teaching of the Bible. And if we are invited by God to live there, it is because through creation, He wants to take care of us like a mother takes care for her children in her house. There is no doubt that the Christian, with Brother Francis, can without shame join in the prayer of the earth, which is sister and mother of all men and women. With Francis, there is also no shame in recognizing our solidarity as a creature with the earth because we are drawn from the same material. To be dust is not a degradation, it is on the contrary to remember what connects us with all the other creatures according to the spirit of Genesis 2 verse 19. Now the Lord had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. Thanks to Franciscan tradition and creation, we can receive that the earth is a sister and a mother to all, being in the same time this common home to be taken care of. We can above all receive the fact as an element of the gospel of creation, that good news flowing from the stream of Christian revelation. So that when earth raises her voice, to make clear that there is a problem, then who, if not the Christians, should react and answer to the call? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. Thank you for mentioning Amazonia. I was happy and lucky to be present at one of the ecological cruises which Ecumenical Patriarch was organizing in Manaus in the Amazonia area. There were 10 ships with religious leaders and experts and journalists who were dealing with the question of ecology of water. And currently at the Ecumenical Social Week, I absolutely feel the same in the same entourage and climate almost. The only thing that is lacking is we don't have any mosquitoes here. I'm joking, of course. Why do I mention here? Father Oleg today in the morning in the interreligious panel with Sheikh Said was talking how Western modernity and Renaissance epoch started separating human being from nature. And Pope Francis is exactly inviting us to come back. And Professor Revol appealed to this. Many cultures who preserved the unity between man and nature are very, very interesting to us and useful to us. They are teaching us a lot. It's also worthwhile to look at our Ukrainian culture, our fairy tales, our songs, and to organize some kind of interdisciplinary discussion how in our modern culture this link between nature and humankind got preserved. Thank you, Professor Revol. Now we have a little bit of time for discussion. We may have a number of questions and a number of opportunities for speakers to answer these questions. And after that, I will invite our president of our institute, Father Ivan Datsko, with a couple of very significant proposals. So the agenda is the following. We may probably include some people online through video. We may probably start from Nazar Laba so that he could ask his question. Then Antonis Kalogerakis can ask a question. We will then give an opportunity to Mr. Konstantin Sigov to ask his question, and then Father Ivan Detsko will share his proposals. Nazar Laba, would you like to ask a question? Please switch on your video so that we could all see you. Okay, then maybe without video, just speak up. Glory to Jesus Christ. At least you can hear me, right? Can you? We do hear you. Go on. Glory to Jesus Christ. My question is to Father Oleg Kendi. I represent seminarians of the Lviv Seminary, ecological section. Which practical practices, practical measures can a pastor at the parish take to educate his parishioners? And the second question, why ecological education is far from the top issue at the parishes. We've been often talking that among theologians, among bishops, there is a lot of readiness. There are lots of excellent documents written. There are lots of directives. But when we talk about the life of parishes, we have to be honest here. This is not enough. We know that in the parishes, well, one of the examples I will provide, it's organization Emmaus that is using second-hand clothing and shoes. So this is some real example of what is happening. So we don't throw our clothes as garbage. So we give it another life. We can also help people and explain people how to sort garbage, because quite often we have very conservative people in the church. Of course, there are lots of progressive, thoughtful people, but when a priest tells that this stuff, sorting glass, paper, and plastic, is extremely significant, then chances are higher than people of elderly generation, or maybe even middle-aged, who are not really preoccupied with these issues, may take this as an authoritative advice from priest and then start implementing it. Maria Hupalo is here with us. She is part of an organization Laudato Si. It's a parish organization based in Lviv. Maybe you've heard about it. This is an organization of young people who pray together, travel around, go on natural trips, and they have initiative in the Lviv. There used to be eco-patriotic trip organizer in the Lviv seminary, and they fostered love to earth, not only by traveling around, but also by organizing trips to clean certain territories from garbage and waste. So in every eparchy, there is an ecological department. We even have an ecological bureau at the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And the aim of this bureau is to promote the use of ready-made recipes, the ready-made algorithms, how to let's say take a shower instead of taking a bath because it's less water. Um, these tools, this kit of tools is already available, but the problem is that we have to communicate that these tools are there. We should tell priests that they should go to this topic more often. A lay person asked me today. She asked a priest, "Do you confess from ecological sin?" And the priest said, "No, I am not confessing from ecological sin." And then she says, this priest says, "But I'm never telling people that ecological sin exists." It's thoughtless use of natural resources. It's throwing around garbage. So there is a lot of work to be done here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Father Oleg, thank you for your answer. Antonis Kalogerakis, are you willing to ask a question? Antonis, are you there? He disappeared, right? Antonis, if you are not with us, then we will read your question. How the notion, the concept of integral ecology can be implemented in parishes and churches as a practical step towards fighting ecological collapse. Maybe Father Georgy Kovalenko would like to jump in and say something on this topic from an Orthodox perspective here in Ukraine. It seems to me that at least part of my presentation was already an answer to this question. Destroying environment is a sin, as Father Oleg said. We have to understand this. And an opposite virtue to this sin is protection of environment. It's not paying tribute to the fashionable thinking. It has to go together with a deep theological mindset that the world has been created by God with love. Then, blessed utilization and recycling, I am saying in inverted commas, but it has to be blessed, it has to be welcomed. And maybe parish in a small village can become a place where these containers for recycling would, for recycled garbage would stand. Because it also requires a resource. And maybe some people who do not pay attention to sorting out garbage would be ashamed. The church here should help in developing new ecological skills and habits. Many things were blessed through religious advices or prohibitions, or sometimes it was explained through medical or other or health issues. Another question: ecclesiastic traditions, funeral traditions, cemeteries. It's a huge topic into which church should jump in. And ecological calendar. I've been speaking about ecological calendar for a long time. When we add theological senses to ecological senses, so when it works. When we sanctify water, we talk about the clean water, how important it is to treat water with respect. when we talk about things related to environment, we should add theological issues and some practical moments. When we stop stop perceiving a day off, a religious celebration as a day off when you don't do anything. It should be, on the contrary, it should be a day when you are on, you do something, you dedicate your time to cleaning the area around, to planting trees, because to plant a tree or to plant a flower on a religious holiday is not a violation of celebrating the holiday. So we should conceive new traditions on the level of parishes. This cannot be done from the management level. It should be done on the local level. And it's not only priests who can be responsible for this. Also, different ecological activists should join up. The youth, supported with priests, supported by priests, morally, financially, to be able to start these new traditions, search these new forms. And the decisions can be unique, they can be different. Maybe some things will be universal, but there may be some local, unique inventions and developments. Ecology and ecological dimension in the parish require a lot of attention and thinking. Maybe we should look into our pre-modern times. Remember, rejoice the earth, the Son of God is born. It's a combination of traditional pagan thinking transformed with Christian thinking, with incarnation of Christ. I will read out a couple of questions and then we'll pass the floor to Professor Sihov. One question from Penny Cavill and from Michael Holzweiser pertain to dialogue and cooperation of different ecumenical, ecological and ecumenical organizations dealing with the protection of environment. Mr. Holzweiser says that in the dialogue it is important to be aware of one's own identity but be open to a dialogue. Miss Kabil is also quoting here different initiatives. So the question is probably what can churches do together in dialogue in terms of ecology? And another question from Christina Mikhailuk. She writes, we are used to treat nature as a resource. When we talk about nature as a gift, we still think that it's a gift given to us, so we are free to use it as we want. So this is accent of property, and it spoils our relationship with nature. And now I want to pass the floor to Mr. Konstantin Sihov, and after that I will invite I will probably give an opportunity for panelists to reply, and then Mr. Ivan Datsko will speak. Thank you very much. I've been learning from everyone who was teaching me. I can only repeat the words of Benzon that were quoted at the beginning by professor and director of the Institute of Ecumenic Studies at the beginning of this session. And I can say that Ukrainian Christian academic community that was mentioned by Father Oleg as ecosystem is a very significant context for us, because we are all aware that we are talking here not only about fauna and flora, but also about social environment, because social environment is part of the natural environment. And I would like to address Ukrainian Christian academic community. When we started all this together with Antoine Rzhakovsky and our colleagues from the Ukrainian Catholic University, everybody who is talking today is enriching us with this wonderful topic. And Father Georgi not accidentally accentuated that ecology begins with our perception, with our understanding, that when we look at the gravestones in the cemetery, we should understand that the memory of the perished is together with us through the pictures, through the photographs, through the films and other stuff. And I want to address all the participants. I can say that I have discovered for myself Father John Chryzavhis when I was reading his biography, or his biography of Bartholomew written by him, and he writes how this sensitive person gave him a sense, a feeling that he can encompass different spheres. Miss Maria from Greece and Fabienne Revol from Lyon know very well the collection Sourds Chrétiennes. It's one of the best library of fathers of the church, where Greek fathers of the church have been translated, rendered into contemporary French. For us in Kiev, it's a pattern for imitation, how this should be done in Ukrainian. Together with Father Georgi, we started creating a new library of Sophia. And in this library, we can include a shared thesaurus where ecological wisdom would take its place from contemporary writers, going back to biblical sources and sources of patristic traditions, both Western and Eastern. So is there any analogous thesaurus in France or in Greece where the topic would not be simply limited by a number of books? It can be just a nice combination of books. Of course, we are talking now about Ukraine, but maybe there are some already existing examples in other countries. A unified thesaurus where different spiritual traditions gather together, and where in one space you can read both Benzom and some Hasidic wisdom and Christian wisdom of the West and of the East. So it's a call for cooperation and a question at the same time. What insights can you have in this direction? So I'm calling for cooperation in this new library of Sofia. Thank you, Konstantin Borisovich. I'm sure that Father Ivan will also have interesting proposals. But before we give the floor to Father Ivan Datsko, I will read the question by Petrus Vassiliagos from Greece. He is also a significant figure in ecumenical movement. And then we'll pass the floor briefly to Maria. Maybe Maria will tell us how this message of Patriarch Bartholomew was perceived in Greece, because we are so preoccupied with Ukrainian environment. Maybe Maria will tell us how in Greek metropoly, on parishes, the teachings by Bartholomew were perceived. So the question from Vassiliagis: how can Ukrainian Christian communities help in cooperation between the Ecumenical Patriarchate and Rome? What was mentioned by Maria Sereti today. I can only add to Maria Sereti's speech. She was very interesting. I was only thinking how I was thinking how to combine two encyclicals by Francis, and if we unite them, it will be like everything we praise, or we are all brothers. So it's like combination of two in one. Maria, would you like to comment? Uh, for some reason, she cannot speak. We cannot hear her. Maria Serretti, can you switch on your mic? I can see that Maria is having some technical issues. Maybe she will manage to get in. I'm sure that Father Ivan Datsko will help us to answer the question of Professor Vasilyagis, how Ukrainian Christian communities can help in cooperation between the Ecumenic Patriarchate and Rome. What was mentioned by Maria Serretti in her speech. Father Ivan is a member of the official commission of dialogue between Catholic and Orthodox churches, and I think that he is the right person to answer this question. Glory to Jesus Christ. I can see that there is a certain telepathy in our councils, in our sessions. And I think I can only add to the many thoughts expressed by my colleague, Professor Sigov. I would like to summarize a little bit. And I would like you to jot down certain ideas that I will offer. The first thing I would like to remind to the representatives of the theological department of the Ukrainian Catholic University that today is John Chrysostom's celebration, who is the patron of the theological department at UKU. And we were listening today to his a part of his epistle, where he says that fear destroys love. Those who have love are not perfect in love. And I would like to encourage you to get rid of fear, because both in the spiritual world and in business, the Germans say that fear is the worst advisor. So let us be brave. I will give some critical remarks, but not to criticize, but to unite us. Many fathers participated in this session these days, but I have a right to address Greek Catholic Church because I'm representative of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. There is not a single monk or someone from Redemptorist order. Maybe I'm mistaken. If I'm mistaken, please correct me. And we don't have any sisters who are working so much in the sphere of catechism. One of the very significant element, specialists, both men and women, and see how united are we by ecological issue. Don't think that Father is just that the deacon and the priest can bless. I don't know if you have seen the first volume about the primacy of the Church. It's Orthodox, Catholic, Greek Catholics, Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jesuits. The second volume. Who is the main editor, chief editor? John Chryssavchis. I'm not going to, play down someone. I like to watch football matches. Tomorrow Ukraine and Germany play, and I'm a Ukrainian. So but I am in Germany. Can I ask you to go to your proposals? They are very significant, and I don't want you to interrupt you. Okay, proposals. I think that we should foster friendship, although we are online, but we already got acquainted. The second element, we must get stabilized, and foster certain awareness in the work of ecumenical social weeks and the Ukrainian Christian academic community. It all got started from the Kiev Mohyla University, but we should do this all together with the Ukrainian Catholic University, maybe in some other academy, maybe in Lutsk, I don't know. Let's do this together. And the most important, we have to pray. That's a godly deed. And people must see us praying together. And we can have together services. If we can have liturgy together, well, we cannot have shared liturgy, but we can have services in the church together. Let's not be afraid to exchange professors and students. I'm sure that Ukrainian Catholic University is ready to invite a whole range of theologians to teach at UKU, and we are expecting that this can be done. Please get rid of fear. We should not convert. We should go to the sources, ad fontes. An extremely significant thing is, and Patriarch Yosef Slipy used to say about this, is the creation of the shared or common liturgical commission or working group for developing the Ukrainian, one shared Ukrainian translation of all church services books of ours. We had a Ukrainian translation in the Greek Catholic Church, then the Ukrainian translation in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Kiev Patriarchate, and there are lots of liturgical texts that pertain to Kievan tradition. Point number 6, I offer that we produce letters of thanksgiving and send them to his beatitude Svetoslav, to his All Holiness Bartholomew I. I know that be it not for Peter Turkson, we wouldn't have probably been in touch so much and close with Roman Holy See. I know that it's difficult even to go beyond Italy, leaving alone Vatican, without the blessing of the Pope. So I'm again stressing the exchange of professors. We are not going to touch any controversial questions. We are not going to solve the issue of filioque. And at the end, I would like to quote Metropolitan Andrei Sheptensky to foster longing for unity. so that our people would be striving for this unity. Because we often think, God, grant us unity, but we do everything to get ununited, disunited. And again, I will repeat this English proverb: where is the will, there is a way. If you really want something, you will achieve it. And Metropolitan Andrei was writing in his epistle, we have to learn how to strive for unity. And I offer here to have a discussion a little bit, how to talk about what to talk in future, and maybe propose something to our leaders. And Professor Seagrove made a very nice introduction. So I'm asking Pavlo to send one example of this book to you and one to the director. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attention. You see, we have started with ecumenism and ended up with economics. Probably I will give an opportunity to panel participants to give final comments. Maybe Metropolitan Filaret would like to say something. I also want to express my gratitude to Ms. Lyudmila Kazimir, who is writing to us. She's together with students. Which university does she represent? Vinnytsia. No, Khmelnytsky University. She teaches ecology at the Khmelnytsky University. She was following us and watching us. Thank you very much, Ms. Lyudmila. And I would like to pass the floor to react to Ivan Datsko's words and others. Maybe some ideas expressed by Professor Vassiliadis to our panelists, and then we would finish and close this session, because we have been half an hour longer, working longer. So let's love our bodies as well, because they also need to have rest. Where shall we start? Who is going to be the first? One by one, in turn. So then, Father Georgi, you were the first. Can you react? I will try in a couple of words. I'm ready to support all the ideas, not non-discussable, because these are the consequences, the summary of the many years of communication. I think this is the great fruit of everyone who participated in different sessions of the Ukrainian Christian academic community. And Pavlo almost stole from my tongue the words about ecology. Yes, ecology can deal with parishes and with businesses. We have to unite our efforts with people who are dealing with recycling, and parish can support these people and earn some money at the same time. And the last replica about the resource, treating nature as a resource, and even gift is treated as a source. So what shall be done with this? You know, it's an eternal resource. If we believe that next generations are behind us, it's not our resource only. It's also a resource of our children, of humankind in general. So who else, if not Christians, have to treat this gift of God with care and love? Thank you. Then I will ask Father Oleg, and if Maria Seretti is able, then she can join us and say a couple of words. I had resonations inside of me when Mr. Konstantin Sigov expressed idea to create this library. We have some initiatives of this ecological library. Unfortunately, it is filled with ecology, mostly on natural sciences, very few theological researches. There are some translations, there are some brief articles. Maybe it's also an appeal to Father Georgi. We have to transform our thoughts into articles and then into books. And then next, we have to take this book and to go to universities, schools, church parishes and transform our society. Because very often we talk a lot, but we also have to incarnate our words into deeds. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Maria, can you join us? While Maria is joining us, I want to pass greetings from Father Dominic, who is listening to us from Uganda in Eastern Africa. Greetings to us. Be it not for coronavirus, we wouldn't have had any opportunity to have such speakers. Maria?
Solidarity. It is very important, this. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. It's exactly what we are trying to do here at the Ecumenical Social Week. Church that can go into dialogue with secular environment. And that's why there are a lot of panels dedicated to business, ecologically aware restaurants, waste-free. I'm also inviting you to go on our site and have a look at our materials. Unfortunately, now we have to close our session, and that's why I would like to say in advance, to make an advertisement, so to say, and to remember, of course, our partners and everyone who made it possible for this session. First of all, advertisement. On the 4th of November, we are going to have a session of the Ukrainian Christian academic community dedicated to the laity and unity. Unity and laity. We had already one topic like this, but we are continuing. You know that in Vatican they will have a synod of bishops dedicated to the topic of unity. And that's why we are already getting ready to this, to be on the mainstream. On the 4th of November, we will have Kirill Hovorun, Father Andriy Chirovsky, Dr. Babinsky, and Mr. Bortnik. So I'm inviting everyone. And so this was an announcement. And now I want to express my gratitude to all our today's panelists and participants. Thanks to all our partners. The Konrad Adenauer Foundation. I also want to thank our partner, the partner of the Ukrainian Christian academic community, Renovabis, to all our experts, to the social work program in the Ukrainian Catholic University, also the Center of Eco-Theology and Sustainable Development, Father Oleg and Marichka Hupolo, all the seminarians, Orest Apostoluk, who was with us, Andriy Tretyak, and all the supporting team. The Institute of Religion and Society, Institute of Leadership and Management, a Bureau of Ecology at the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, a Bureau of Human Rights, NGO Clean City, National University University, Lviv Polytechnic, the chair of sociology and social work at the Lviv Polytechnic, also educational center named after Zerovich, initiative group of art cluster group, also Department of Natural Resources at the Lviv City Administration, then the City Hall of Lviv that organized a couple of panels and was a great support to our event. I also want to express gratitude to our media partner, RISU. I want to thank our media partners. There are many of them. I will not be able to name all of them. Also, Media Lviv, our technical support. Without you, nobody could hear us, and Uganda would not be with us if you were not with us. Thank you very much for supporting us. I also want to express gratitude to our press center. They were working very hard. Many people here are from the Ukrainian Catholic University School of Journalists. Also, the team of the Ecumenical Institute, Institute of Ecumenical Studies, Irina Kitura, who was organizing all this. Please show them, because the world must know who organized all this. Also, Mr. Father Roman Figas, who was spending a lot of sleepless nights. Also, Taras Kurilets, who was a contacting person, and a gratitude to our interpreter, who did this titanic work during our sessions. To Halina Pastushuk for her translation. Thank you. Thanks to everyone, and of course Father Ivan Detsko, who is praying for us and who is always encouraging us to practical solutions. I am grateful to our churches, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, for the message and for the support from the side of His Beatitude Sviatoslav, and also to His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, and for blessing the opportunity for Father John Chryzavchis to be present with us. Also, Cardinal Peter Turkson was a great joy to us. He was 2 days with us. Thanks to everyone, and may God bless you.